our what management? Go ahead. Emergency management. So we're gonna have introductions. I'm George Micka. I chair the land conservation.
My name is John Reeder. I'm a supervisor for District 20.
Gerald Richardson, landowner.
George Say, District 14. Micro technician, action development.
Soon to be retired.
Soon.
Seth Hackbarth, Watershed Project Coordinator, Ashland County.
Scott Caven, Land and Water Specialist, Ashland County.
Matt Boland, agricultural technician for Ashland County and wildlife damage program coordinator for Ashland County.
Mary Jo Gingras, county conservationist.
Pat Kinney, County Board Member.
Dan Grady, County Administrator.
Dick Bufall, as the county board chair.
Felicia Flint, Administrative Assistant.
Wankowski, new emergency management director.
Thank you.
And then Laura, if you want to introduce yourself online.
Hi, I'm Laura, Supervisor Laura on the county board.
Thank you.
Any public comments? Any public comment? Anybody on the horn that wants to have a say? Share something? If not, we'll go to number 4, which is approval of the minutes. Jerry moves to support the minutes as they were presented. John Wiener seconds it. Any comments, questions, or additions, corrections? If none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Number 5 is a clean water resolution. You all got them in your packets. Hopefully you read them. And it's basically to support the Clean Water Act, which there's no reason we wouldn't support that. I mean, that's what we're all about. So, Mary Jo, anybody got a question on that? Go ahead, Pat. Well, let's get it on the floor first.
This is Pat. I'll make a motion to approve.
Are you seconding it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got Pat made a motion, John seconded it to approve it. Okay, any comments, questions?
Could we scroll down to the whereas? So in the now further be it resolved that the Ashland County Lands Conservation Committee support, the word support, I believe, should be supports. But English was not my strong suit, but I believe that should be supports. All right, thank you.
Go ahead, George.
So a similar resolution was discussed previously in the Ag and Extension and also in this committee and sent on to the executive committee for consideration and to see if we could do it as a joint resolution with the tribal council. But as far as I know, we haven't heard anything back from the tribal council to do a joint resolution between Bad River and Ashland County, as had been done between Red Cliff and Bayfield County. So unless there's someone that has more information about that, I support, so unless there's more information about that that says we could still do a joint resolution, I would support forwarding this on to the executive committee for the full board to vote on this resolution on behalf of Ashland County alone. It would not preclude doing a joint resolution, as a follow-up at some later time when the tribal council was prepared to deal with the issue, unless somebody has information that they already have.
With that,
I
Go
could
ahead.
speak about this. So the background on this is that at the meeting on March 29th, Sheila Mitchell came before the Land Conservation Committee and asked that we develop a clean water resolution. And we learned that Bayfield County had developed a joint resolution with Red Cliff in 2022, and that's what George is speaking about. So she recommended that Ashland do the same with Bad River. And Toller Griggs was also here with her, speaking in public comment. And he commented, you know, he agreed with her that it's important to protect waters of the state, and he supported that Ashland would develop a similar resolution to what Bayfield County. And they presented what was called a joint proclamation. So Dan did take that to Chairman Wiggins and asked that they present that to tribal council. So far, nothing has been done with that. And the League of Women Voters, who brought this issue to us, has been in communication with me regularly throughout the summer, asking, where are we? So I talked to Dan about it, and we decided at this point, we're gonna go ahead and just bring this through the Land Conservation Committee to the county board, pass this as a county. This week, I also sent a copy of this resolution and the joint proclamation to Mike Berlin. And he is gonna take it to the Bad River Natural Resources Tribal Council through Naomi Tillison, who's the Natural Resources Director there. So hopefully we'll see some movement on it. I don't know how quickly that will happen, but if they do pass the joint proclamation, then at that point, that would take the place of a clean water resolution that the county board hopefully will pass. Because that would be a joint agreement between the two entities. So at this point, I'm bringing this before the committee because we've been requested to do something like this for over a year by the League of Women Voters. And the process for us would be to pass it at the committee level. And then I believe it can go directly to county board. So I've held a draft placement for this on the next county board meeting. There is another word, the title of it should be Clean Water Resolution. And I noticed yesterday that I had referendum in there. The previous draft of this last year was actually trying to bring it before the county to be put on a referendum. So that also needs to be corrected before it goes on to county board.
Go ahead, George. You wanna push your thing on?
Yeah, so we want to move to amend to make the corrections that Pat and Mary Jo had indicated, which is adding an S in the one word and striking referendum from the title. I think those are the only corrections that we need.
I will accept those amendments.
Is there a second to my motion?
So what are you changing?
So Pat, it was now in the paragraph, now therefore be resolved that the Ashland County Land Conservation Committee support. The amendment is to add an S, the letter S at the end of the word support, so that it reads supports,
You want an S on it?
an S. And then the second part of the amendment is to strike the word referendum in the title.
You're gonna scratch referendum?
Take out the word referendum from the title, yes.
All right, we'll have to vote on that. Everybody understand that as a committee? We're taking out referendum and we're putting an S on the,
Supports.
okay? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, now it's changed. So we got the referendum out of there and the S on the other word, on supports. Go ahead, Pat.
A question for Mary Jo. You said if we do a joint resolution with Bad River, we would, I believe the word was replace the one that we're considering passing now, how do you actually go about, as far as process, replacing a resolution, the one that we're considering passing now? Do you rescind it? Or do you substitute it, or what's the process for the record then, how that works?
I think this resolution would just stay in place and then we'd pass a joint resolution to go with it. There would be no reason to change this. It would just, so it'd be a separate resolution, and this time Bad River would be involved in it.
Yeah, and then,
Go ahead, John.
How is this funded anyway?
Basically, what the resolution is for, counties around the state are passing this type of resolution to show the state legislature that there's support from the county levels in protecting water through staffing of land conservation departments. So down at the second, be it further resolved, it states that Ashland County expects that the governor of Wisconsin and the member of Wisconsin legislature financially and fully support programs and staff funding to allow Ashland County to protect surface and groundwater for current and future generations. So that provides support stating that the county is conducting stewardship activities and they're aware of protecting clean water in the county, and that they expect the state to help provide financial support to do the same thing. So Monroe County's passed something like this. There's been a number of counties in the state that have passed this. And there was a resolution a year ago that counties were passing to put something on the referendum stating that clean water is a right for all people and we need to be aware of it. Now, that resolution that was referendum based has expired. So we're no longer doing that, but we have this resolution in place to show what the county's stance on this issue is and that they expect the state to help and support. And it goes back to the funding of our departments. We receive state funding for staffing these departments, and our mission is to protect surface and groundwater issues. Well, it's not, there's no dollar amount tied to it. It's more of a statement saying that we are committed to this and we expect that the state will commit as well. Last year, Wisconsin Land and Water Association was lobbying at the state level for an increase of $11 million for staffing support. And so it was a large lobbying campaign last year. They ended up the state legislature did not vote in favor of that, but that's what this goes back to. Chapter 92, which requires that the state provide support staffing 100% for the first position in a land conservation department, 70% for the second, 50% for the third. Currently, the state is only able to fund the first position and part of a second position. So this has come up over the course of the last 2 or 3 decades, that there's been lobbying efforts to try and get the state to commit to fully funding that allocation as the statute reads. We have not been successful in that since these departments were formed in the 80s. So this is just another way of showing that the county supports these departments and that they expect the state and the legislature to do the same. Mhm.
So what you're saying is there's nobody really against the clean water referendum resolution. We're trying to add points to get them to put more money into it, and that's a positive thing, yeah. Any other comments or questions on that?
That we expect the governor, we expect.
You know, we've had a conservationist since the late 80s, when the state came out and said every county has to have one. And these 4 counties up here felt we didn't need a full-time one, so we had what was called the ABDI, which is the 4 counties got together and hired one. Up until the early 2000s, our state, and they're the ones who goofed it up. They're the ones who said, yeah, you can do this, that, and all of a sudden the legislatures and the DNR says, no, you can't. Everybody's got to have their own. Well, you know who the culprits were? We were the culprits. So we had to split up and get every county up here had a get, and ours worked excellent. Because we had a conservationist, and Mary Jo was over in Iron County, and she was a educator for all 4 counties. But state said, nope, you guys are wrong. The state was wrong, but you guys are wrong. He's when you get your own. So we've been, like Mary Jo has been said, that 30-some years we've been trying to get this fully funded, and they just now. One of the odd things is if a county comes in with $100,000 bill for the state pays it, and if one comes in at 60, they pay it. There isn't a floor that says everybody gets the same amount of money. No. Whatever they charge, that's what they get. So anyway, that's a little history of it. Anybody else? Comments, questions? If not, the motion has been made and seconded to pass this on. All in favor?
All right.
Opposed? If not, motion carried. Number 6, Act 157 Demonstration Project Update and Tour.
Okay, so we've talked about this project for a few years now at the committee level. Act 157 is the act that was passed by the state legislature in 2020, which allocated $150,000 to our department to implement a natural flood management demonstration project in the Marengo. What are ways that we can reduce flood impacts or mitigate flood impacts by implementing conservation practices on the ground? And we've been working diligently for 3 years to come up with practices and landowners and designs. We had worked with Brian Anderson for over 2 years, but that project came to a halt this spring when we were not able to get permits for that process. So we were able to transfer the funding to Todd Berwiger. We're going to be implementing a large-scale wetland restoration and grade stabilization on the south end of his farm, where there's severe erosion that outlets into an unnamed tributary of the Marengo. We're also going to be working with Brian Tody. His property is north of the Highway 112 bridge in the town of White River. And we're getting ready to implement a practice there that's called a post-assisted log structures, PALS for short. This is a practice where you install trees and root structures and logs into the stream bed, similar to what a beaver would do, beaver dams. And this will help capture sediment and slow runoff in an area where the stream has incised or degraded down into the stream bed, and the stream has become disconnected from its floodplain. So when we get heavy rainfall events, the water races down through a channel and causes severe destruction downstream. Installing these PALs or post-assisted log structures into the stream channel will allow the water to slow down. It will increase sediment in the base of the stream channel, and it will force the water to move back up or reconnect with its floodplain and create more of a wetland and slow the flow type of system. So Mike and Seth have been working diligently on that for the past year. I'll let them give you a quick little update, but we believe that we are going to be installing these practices now in the next few weeks, early October. We also are working with Jason Fischbach. Seth will have to correct me, but I believe it's close to a 10-acre wetland restoration. So all three of these projects, Brian Tody, Todd Berwiger, and Jason Fishbach, are all adjacent to each other or all within the same stream catchment, the same stream section that flows into the Marengo. And this is the area that we're using for our demonstration. Different practices on each property to demonstrate ways that we can increase flood storage capacity on the landscape and slow water down to reduce future flood risks to infrastructure and river systems downstream. So I'm gonna pass it over to Seth and Mike just for a couple quick minutes to add things that I may have looked over. And then also part of the grant that we are working on requires us to provide a public tour. So Seth and I have talked about a few dates in October that could be potential opportunities. And we just want to open that up to you guys as well to hear, you know, your comments on a tour and when the best timing would be for that. Seth or Mike, do you guys want to add anything?
Sure. Yeah, like Mary Jo said, all the projects should be starting up in the next couple of weeks here. The rain has pushed it back a little bit further than we were hoping to. But like anything, kind of just gotta take the weather as it comes. So the wetland restoration project that'll be completed as soon as that wetland dries up. The staging for the post-assisted log structures, that should be starting this week and into next week, hopefully get something in the ground. And then once the corn's off by Todd Berwiger and we're able to use his access road, that'll be starting to happen as well. So if there's anyone interested, first off, to see these projects, we'll see who's interested and then we can work on dates from there. So if anyone's interested, maybe a little show of hands. Pat, George. Okay. Kind of off the top of our heads, we were thinking October 20th or the stretch from the 24th through the 27th. If those dates would work for you guys, and then we'd have a BART bus tour, so everyone will travel together and we'll explain in more detail on our way to each stop then, and have project plans with us as well to showcase what work we've done and that type of stuff in the last few years. So.
So you haven't set the date yet?
Nope, that's what we're trying to figure out.
And how many places do you plan on stopping at?
We'd stop at the 3 natural flood management sites. So, and they're all within, I don't know, 5-minute drive furthest to furthest.
Thinking of a morning plan or afternoon or?
Morning, most likely. Yep.
Lunch planned after, just coffee and, or nothing?
Not that I know of, no.
Unless you're cooking it.
Yeah.
Unless you're making.
I am.
Can you repeat the dates again?
Either October 20th or from the stretch of October 24th through the 27th.
What's 20th, Friday?
Yep, the 20th would be a Friday, and then that next week would be a Tuesday through Friday.
A lot of walking or just,
It will be down into a ravine at one site where it can be steep. But there should be a fairly decent road by then with all the construction done and machinery. And then the other 2 sites, one would be walking basically in Jason Fishbach's backyard. So
where basically are they, in the middle or the Marengo River or where are,
just
where you
small
planning?
tributaries. Yep. So,
we don't have to walk to St. Peter's Dome, do we?
The sites are all located within a half a mile of the town of White River Town Hall, Berwiger Road. So all 3 sites would be located about a half a mile from that town hall. And I would say the most walking, Mike and Seth, is maybe 2 city blocks at each site.
Yeah, you just gotta remember that the Tony site it's hilly. I mean,
Yes.
it ain't easy walking.
Yep,
The
so,
other- The other two is be really easy walking. Beer Wagers would be like walking in here and same with, Fish Pond.
so the
You know where
Toady
Fish Pond
site,
is, don't you, Jordan, at the end of, Beer Wager Road? That's where the Fish Pond, wetland is, end of Beer Wager Road, you know, town, city, the White River's on the corner, town hall, go down that road, and it's right at the end on the west side. And then the other one, Toady is on G Anderson Road. And then, of course, Beer Wagers is right behind, Dale's house, maybe quarter mile. You drive right up to the 2 out of the 3 sites.
I could bring my side by side if you guys want it.
Well, do no good at Toadies,
Okay.
but at the other 2, it would help.
the Toady site will be walking approximately 2 city blocks on a deer trail going down into a ravine.
Good.
So that, to give you a idea of what it would be like, that's what it would be like. And then like Mike said, the other 2 sites are pretty flat ground walking through cornfield.
My question is, in case if it's raining or that, then we really wouldn't have to get out.
You're not gonna see anything from the bus where
Okay.
the bus will be able to park. We are gonna have to walk.
Go ahead, Pat.
Seth, that week, if things stay on schedule out at the property I own, is gonna be an incredibly busy week with some things going on out there. And that's if it stays on schedule. So I'm interested, send me emails through county email or leave a voice message. If I'm available, can get out there, I will, but don't schedule around me because that's my busiest week of the year if all goes as planned.
Okay.
No, the 20th. The house that's out there is scheduled to go away. The closing is the 19th and the movers starting on 20. I gotta disconnect water, power, sewer, and stuff. So yeah, that's my crazy week if it goes as planned. Hopefully it does, but I'll still try to sneak over if you have it scheduled and get away.
And these dates are flexible, but as fall weather is, we get into November too much and it'll be a little nippy, so. But. yeah,
Go ahead,
good.
Jerry.
Excuse me, in case you wanted more area, my project on Ringo River is done and established, and sure, it's right in the same area. You could take a look at that if you want. Then I do have another question on, shovel-ready design on Richardson Road. Could somebody explain that a little bit briefly here? So I understand it a little better.
Yep.
Where are you reading that?
Can you bracket on, priorities and performance measurement?
Oh, in the work plan?
Yeah, maybe I'm out of area here, but, I thought because we're working on the Ringo River in that area right there, this is all included in it.
Well, I don't see what you're looking at, but, that was an idea that we had to prepare. Yeah, okay, that was in our work plan. So that's something that we expected to do this year. Yeah. We are not going to be able to get the permits to work on that road at this point. So Richardson Road and Berwiger Road are in a floodplain that requires special permitting through FEMA, the Emergency Management Association. We have spent over $20,000 working with an engineer trying to help us get our designs prepared to pass what the permit requirements are for FEMA. And we've come to a standstill. So if we're gonna end up working on Richardson Road in the future, if we want to replace the culvert on Berwiger Road and Marengo River Road, those are 3 areas that we know we have problem sites. That's gonna require substantial engineering design and permit review that is above the capabilities that we have. So we're gonna have to end up writing a future grant for multi-hundreds of dollars that we could actually hire an engineering firm to help us move through that process. And we did not realize that until this past winter, going through the projects that Mike has been working on for the last 3 years. So when we wrote that work plan last year, we had not realized at that point the type of permit barriers that we were going to be up against. So instead of Richardson Road design, we switched our project over to Todd Berwiger, did an initial shovel-ready design, and we have funding now that we're going to go ahead and just implement it. So, yeah. So instead of just producing a shovel-ready design, we're actually going to move into the implementation stage. But that still leaves Richardson Road and Berwiger Road as concern areas for us that we have not determined yet how we are going to be able to work on those. But there are large-scale grants that we have the opportunity to go for in the future. Yeah, it's complicated.
Question, who's gonna be invited to this?
County board members, elected officials, anybody else that we want to invite.
So. in
It's
other
open
words,
to the
they'd have
public.
to call in a week in advance, so you know how kind of a bus you need to get on.
Yeah, Seth is looking at a BART bus now. I don't know how many people fit on a BART bus.
Yep, I've kind of been waiting to see if we have a rough head count before I go ahead and, you know, set all that type of stuff up, but yeah, that's kind of, if we get a rough number of, you know, if there's 5 people interested today, just something to go off of for now. And then if it changes or fluctuates a little bit, even if, you know, you might be interested and end up not coming, that's fine. But if you think there might be a slight chance you would want to, just so we know we have a seat for you on the tour.
Hmm?
How many fit on the BART bus?
Anywhere from 9 to 30,
What size bus you take?
huh?
Depending on the size bus.
Yeah.
I'm estimating we're gonna have between 20 and 30. I'm gonna open it up to the full county board. We might want to invite our adjacent county partners, Iron County, Bayfield County. Bayfield County is probably gonna be doing something similar to this in the Marengo area that's in their county. And we work collaboratively on a lot of other projects, so I'm assuming they might be interested in seeing some of this. But I mean, I don't want it to be massive because, you know, we're on private lands. I want to respect the landowners. But I'm guessing it's probably going to be in the 20 to 30. Now, in addition to that, we also have Representative Green and Senator Quinn coming on October 9th. We're going to be meeting at 1 o'clock at the town of White River Hall. We are going to be touring these sites with the two of them. Now, these projects are probably not going to be, I know they won't all be installed. One of them might be in construction. Another one might be done. We don't know. But they will be here on October 9th to see these sites and for us to talk about this work and the challenges that we've had. I've also asked Brian Anderson to be present. He's the landowner that's been working with us for over 2 years and we're not able to work on his property now. So I want him to share some of his challenges that he's had on his farm, some of his frustrations, so that those legislators can hear the barriers that we're facing with these types of permitting constraints. So that's another opportunity. If anyone's interested, you could attend that. It's going to be 1 o'clock on October 9th. We're meeting at the town of White River Hall. I'm not going to open that up to the full county board because it's going to be just more discussion about what we are asking of the legislators and things that we would like them to look at with the types of permitting. So I don't want to have a whole lot of people present, but absolutely, if any committee members are interested, it would be nice to have a couple people represented from this committee.
Any other questions, any comments for Mary Jo on this? Number 7. 24 LWRM work a plan. Go ahead, Mary Jo.
Okay, this is where Jerry was getting to. Our department runs off of our Land and Water Resource Management Plan, the LWRM. Every 10 years, the state requires counties to update their Land and Water Resource Management Plan. So this is the process that we went through in 2019 when I first came on board. We updated our Land and Water Plan for 10 years. And our work plan, which I included in your packet. Maybe we did not include the work plan. Can you go to the very end of this, Carisha? Okay, right there. That's the work plan that was written for a 5-year period. And the work plan basically identifies what are our goals and activities? What are the things that we are going to deliver from our department? 25% of this work plan includes climate adaptation and strategies. When we wrote this plan, we brought the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science in from Michigan Tech. They provided a workshop for the committee members. They talked to us about climate strategies. What are things that we can do to help us better adapt for the future? And we incorporated a number of those strategies into this plan. So 25% of this work plan does include specific strategies to help us adapt to the future conditions that were expected here in Ashland County. So the work plan is a 5-year plan, which means that next year in 2024, we have to update our work plan. And on April 2nd, I'll have to go before the Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation Board in Madison. And included in your packet is a list of questions that we are going to have to answer as a staff and as a committee. So that was included in your packet. So what I want to do is just get started early, and sometime in the winter at one of our committee meetings, we will be working through this as a committee. I will be working on answering these questions and drawing together the projects that we've worked on over the last 5 years that help answer these questions. But this is something that you guys are going to want to kind of keep on your radar, that this is something that's going to be coming up this winter. I don't know if you want me to go through all of these questions right now. I don't think I need to do that, but basically it's going to be looking at what have we accomplished in the last 5 years? And is that what we said that we would deliver on in our work plan? The other piece that's attached there is the Ashland County 2023 annual work plan. So these were priorities that were identified. I don't know if that's in that packet, Carisha. It would be after this section. Okay, right there. So every year we're required by the state to develop an annual work plan. What are the things that we're going to work on this year? And then at the end of the year, we have to provide an update on what did we accomplish, or what was deferred, or what is ongoing. So we have a long history of delivering on our work plans. Honestly, we have never had a problem implementing the things that we say we're going to implement. We have a history of developing work plans that are achievable, but also challenge our department to make sure that we are accomplishing the most that we can possibly get done in the county. I would say that our workload is a heavy workload, but it's a successful and accomplishable workload. So included in there is the 2023 work plan. There is going to be something like what Jerry found in there, Richardson Road Shovel Ready project. That's a project that we're not going to be able to develop a shovel ready design this year because we already know that the permit system is not achievable for us at this point. So we have selected another site to work on in place of that. So for an example like that, for our accomplishment, we'll end up listing what we accomplished in place of that activity that was planned. For the winter, when we schedule we'll have a planning meeting on this. I will basically be sending out this type of information to you again, a copy of our 5-year work plan. I will have information for you to help answer these questions on the accomplishments that we've worked on. Some of the areas that if we had areas that we were unable to implement activities that we expected to. Another focus is, what is our strategy for working on farms? Do we prioritize farm work? Do we have concern farms that we still need to address? So this is going to take some research from me and our staff this winter to answer some of this, and then get us in a place where we can have a working meeting with the committee. I've been through this process before. It's time consuming, but it's not super difficult. And I don't have any concerns with this because of the type of work that we have been working on and the level of work that we achieve through the department.
Go ahead, Pat.
So something that I don't see in there is buckthorn. There's aquatic invasive species and there's some education for landowners. As I go down Sanborn Avenue 112 out to the farm, through Sanborn and stuff, it's amazing how fast the buckthorn is spreading along there, including on where there's been some wetlands and ponds, done close to Ashland, where you see the buckthorn coming in. And in my neck of the woods now, I'm cutting 4 to 6 a year on the 210 acres I have. And I have a neighbor to the east who does not want to do anything with it, and said, well, maybe it'll keep the trespassers out because of the thorns. And it's, on the property line. So, I don't know, even if a person or persons have a property that size and they do everything they can annually, if you can keep it out. Our house in Ashland by Northland College is a big silver maple, and the birds sit in it, and from the street to our sidewalk is a carpet of buckthorn. And short of herbicides, every year you can't get rid of it. I don't know what the answer to that is. I have a brother in Verona, which is by Madison, and he is adjacent to 80 acres of woods, and he maintains trails there for the woman that owns it. That was logged, 8-10 years ago, and it was really nice cherry, hickory, all sorts of nice hardwood. But once it was opened up, the understory is so thick with buckthorn, you hardly can get off the trail. So as I look at the buckthorn issue, and I have no answers, but as you look at your work plan and talk to the forestry committee and department, it seems, and I don't know if it's just buckthorn's worse, close to the bay because of the birds in the water, anywhere there's water, there's birds. But it's clearly, through the Mason area along White River, it's just amazing how this stuff is spreading. And I don't know what the long-term thing is, but some of what I've read is there's people who say, long-term, what's going to happen with forests is because of buckthorn and honeysuckle. And honeysuckle is a big issue down there too. Some areas that were small cornfields, when they were left, they're now honeysuckle 8, 10, 12 feet tall, and it's just overtaken. Is some of what I've read say, we're just going to end up, clear cutting things, applying herbicides for a year or two, working it up a bit, and then, reseeding that. And we won't see woods as we think of woods, how we grew up and where we've, hunted, et cetera. It's going to be different because that's the only way you can effectively deal with invasive species like buckthorn and honeysuckle. So I don't know what we can do or how much we can do, but I think we should develop a plan county-wise that's research informed. And I think we may need to support doing things. It might be things like, Ashland County's got a wood chipper, and maybe we start having days where, we we go through areas, and if you want to cut buckthorn or, pay someone to do that, we cut and chip these. I see these buckthorns going to seed and it's like, oh man, I want to go cut that. And actually I do go cut some in my neck of the woods. But, I shouldn't be doing that if they're not mine. So, but I don't know where this takes us, but it's a quality of life issue in so many ways. And if we start tearing up land to clear buckthorn, now we're undoing the big part of what you're trying to do. So I don't have any good answers to that, but I see it.
So I have a few thoughts. I want to hear from Scott. Scott deals with all of our invasive management. He also works with our Northwoods Cooperative Weed Management Area, who is a larger partnership. So Scott, you can go ahead and talk about that for a few minutes, and then I'll give you my ideas.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, thanks, Pat. I think all the information that you relayed, and all the concerns are definitely spot on, definitely real. Yeah, buckthorn, honeysuckle, unfortunately they are, two restricted invasive species that they're found in all 72 counties, in Wisconsin. It's not just an Ashland County problem or a Wisconsin problem. They're all over the Midwest, all over, the US. And, yeah, you brought up some really good points. So I guess within Ashland County, kind of our department and in my position focuses a little bit more on like the aquatic side of things. And then for our terrestrial invasive species work, we have a really, really good working relationship with the Northwoods Cooperative Weed Management Area. And we kind of in partnership with them, we've done everything from, more your mechanical control, cutting and things of that nature. They do a lot of herbicide treatment, so chemical treatment with that. And then also kind of a new one that the weed co-op is kind of exploring is using goats as kind of a biocontrol agent to do that. So we're definitely attacking it, but unfortunately there's so much of it. It is a little bit daunting. It's so widespread. So yeah, the goats will actually, they will basically, consume usually the leaves first, but if they get hungry enough, they'll even go down to some of the twigs and kind of work their way down. So yeah, they will eat it. Yeah, they're very, very effective. I would say there's only like one major outfit in northern Wisconsin that has these buckthorn eating goats, and he will basically lease them out to groups. I have seen locations that have been treated by these goats, and it's pretty impressive to see what they can do. Obviously they can only reach up so high, so it's kind of nice to have the landowner or other folks use a chainsaw or a saw to kind of cut some of these, especially the seed bearing plants down and kind of get it on the level where goats can kind of take care of it there. But that's kind of a long-winded answer of saying it's widespread. And there's definitely no easy answer. Everything is going to be very labor intensive, expensive, no matter how you slice it up. And again, it's found in all 72 counties in Wisconsin. And yeah, very, very widespread. It's definitely a lot of head scratching with that. So we've definitely been going at it for years upon years, decades upon decades. And it's going to continue. So any follow-up questions, definitely happy to answer there. So, or if Mary Jo has stuff to chime in with, that's great too.
So 3 things, Pat. Buckthorn presence will always require maintenance. So that's just something to keep in mind. Most invasive species, once you have them, complete eradication is impossible or near impossible. So with that in mind, if this is something that we want to address more or be more committed to, I would say that we should identify our high priority areas. Where are areas that we have valuable wetlands or valuable properties, county forest, that can produce, you know, financial resources for the county. If we wanted our department to work on this more, my recommendation would be that we identify high priority areas that we would work on. We're never gonna eradicate it from the entire county. And then we would have to develop sort of a maintenance plan or a maintenance commitment to fighting it back. The thought about disturbing the soil, anytime we disturb the soil, we open up the opportunity for something aggressive to come in. So if we are gonna disturb the soil, we are gonna wanna have a plan in place for what are we gonna plant? What natives are we gonna try and encourage to grow there? You know, what do we want this area to look like in the restored phase? So number one, buckthorn presence requires maintenance. We would identify high priority areas. And then like Scott mentioned, the Weed Cooperative has a work crew. So Scott has a long-standing relationship with them. He helps out every year on different sites that have been identified by the cooperative where we need field crews, we need bodies to help. And that would be an opportunity for us to work with a crew of people to have some field days to try and have a big impact on an area. Also, we have the goats. It does sound kind of silly, but like he mentioned, they're highly effective. That's a tool that is available to us locally. So I would say, you know, if this is something that's really important or a priority, this is something that we should be talking about this winter and getting it into our work plan and having some discussion about what would this look like and what is our capacity.
So on the goats, next to my brother Jim in Verona, they did goats in the buckthorn, work great, but they do, the guys that do that say you really need to come back after, I think it's a few weeks or whatever, that second one to really knock it down, and then it's maintenance. So I'd like to, you know, do this in the work plan, and if you talk to the forestry department, you know, as far as doing that. And then because there's so much of this, I think developing a plan to work with the public more so that, you know, people are more informed, and if it's, you know, some of the bigger ones, if we can cut them, and if Roundup or Garland 4 or something is appropriate, so we better understand, you know, when to cut them, time of year to mitigate the resprout and things like that, to get the public better or more knowledgeable and willing to participate, all those things. But yeah, it's here. It's like the weeds. Weed seeds are in the fields. And then as far as opening up the land near the land I have, people have opened up small areas, very small areas, and they've got garlic mustard.
Bye, George.
My question is, if a resident or a landowner calls in to the department and asks for someone to come out and help them identify buckthorn, honeysuckle on their property, maybe tag some of it so they know what they're looking at, do we do that? Do we offer that service?
Yes, we can certainly do it. Again, we have such a good working relationship with the Northwoods Cooperative Weed Management area. That's really their niche. They focus 110% on the terrestrial side of things. Our department historically is focused more on the aquatic side of things, and we any of those in between species. You know, we really work together, and I'm in you know, constant communication with their director there, and she's got a big field crew, and that's basically all they do is from May through, let's say, September. They're working on buckthorn, they're working on honeysuckle, they're working on garlic mustard and Japanese knotweed and Bohemian knotweed and giant knotweed. That's what they do. So yeah, absolutely. I would be more than happy to work with private individuals. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, it's the weed co-op is especially for bigger infestations, I'd be more than happy to tap into to their group as well. So
Yeah, I sort of want to reemphasize Pat's point about public communication, because I think a lot of people don't know what they have. I know I didn't until I saw a brochure that was maybe made available from you folks. And so more public awareness and awareness of an availability to get at least some help identifying what's on their property would maybe go a long way.
Mike, do you want to just mention that buckthorn removal day that you were involved with at Prentice Park years ago?
Yeah, actually, I was involved twice. In my humble opinion, it was like peeing in the ocean. They didn't go back enough. We did it 5 years apart, and I don't know, in my opinion, you gotta go back every 3 years if you're gonna do it, and they went on it totally backwards. They had dump trucks there with backhoes. They should have had a shredder there. We did 3 times the amount of work in half the time, had they had the right equipment and went at it the right way. Not to be critical, but I don't remember who set it up, but it was totally backwards. Absolutely totally backwards. You might as well not even been there.
But you guys had a large work crew that was helping out, right?
Yeah, and again, no, that was probably 10 years ago already, and no one, to my knowledge, been back there since, so. You gotta stick on it, you know, if you're gonna do it, you might as well not even been there the first time, just let it go.
Let me say something about that. Despite its failure to control the Buckthorn and Prentice Park, it was a great PR event. And I'm pretty sure that's where I got the brochure that made me aware that I identified the buckthorn on my property and started going out there and controlling it. So because it's Prentice Park and it was advertised a lot, it was a public awareness event, even though it kind of was done wrong in the terms of how it was managed at the park. That's where I got the brochure.
I'm glad something positive came out of it.
And I think part of it too, just to keep in mind, you know, with that is if we are going to take some of this on, we need to identify those priority areas, and then we have to determine what is our capacity and how much time and staff hours and resources do we want to commit to this.
But Pat,
Another place that you might talk to is Northland College. This is, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. So we're a block from there. So we go over there for walks a lot. But from the Sigurd Olson Institute going south, there's a footbridge. And 5, 6, 7 years ago, they cut out the buckthorn, you know, the bigger stuff, and then they maintained that for a while. So part of what I saw there is there's larger trees, so there's shade. And because they did some maintenance, now they have an understory of the trees coming in that they want. And that has really worked out well. Versus Prentice Park, partly I think about the ash, you know, if that all dies out, you don't have a whole lot to shade out the sunlight from the buckthorn that's coming in. So part of being strategic might be places where it's harder for the buckthorn to reestablish, you know, get the sunlight. And because if you have other trees coming in, you know, they'll to some extent outcompete the buckthorn. It gives you a better shot than if it's an open area full of sunlight. But what they're doing there seems to be working pretty well, but they have to maintain that too. I don't know, it was 2010, I think I helped at Northland on a day cutting buckthorn, and again, that wasn't maintained and it's back. But it was more open. So
And they have a couple professors committed to it and a class of 20 to 30 kids that can do the labor, and a community of 500 students that they can draw volunteers from too. So, you know, we also have to think about what is the capacity for this? How much can 1 or 2 or 5 people or a crew of 10 people do? You know, Northland has some resources that we don't have. So, but yeah, let's talk about this in the winter for sure.
any other questions or comments? Go ahead, John.
For instance, if you get the grants and then for like this year, 23 annual work plan, if that's required by the state, so do you have to communicate with the state on every incident that you do? You know,
Yes, we
so-
write a work plan that has bulleted items saying what we're gonna do. And then, in April of the following year, when we request our funding for the next year, we have to report on those exact items that we said we were gonna do. We have to provide a follow-up accomplishment report. So
Okay.
yeah, we are addressing every item that we said we were gonna deliver on. And we have to identify if we accomplish that or not.
I see. So there are a lot of eyes looking at us then.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that the state does not want to hear all the time is ongoing. I remember when I was on the committee, on the state committee, and guys would come in, conservation, and said, well, this is ongoing, and they said, hey, we don't want to hear the ongoing. We want to hear it was done or it's moved to the next year. What else? Anything else on 157? If not, we'll go to, let's see, we're done with 7, go to 8, climate change adaptation discussion. You wanna start that off? George?
Sure, I'll speak to that. I think by having reviewed the plan that's been put together, it incorporates this committee's dedication to looking at the future and anticipating things that we may have to deal with. So to me, this committee's in really good shape. This department's in really good shape in that dimension. But the county board at its last meeting approved to make permanent the comprehensive plan committee. And over the coming months, there'll be appointments to that committee. And it's my objective to have the committees in which I'm engaged provide input to that planning committee so that they can sort of get the overview of what the different departments are doing in anticipation of climate events, as well as all the other considerations that they have to deal with. So I don't have a whole lot more to add in terms of discussion here, because I just think this department, this committee is really in really good shape in this dimension.
Anybody else want to join in on that? Go ahead, Pat.
But George said is spot on, and so we're to a point where, you know, I guess the board chair and others need to think about who's interested in being appointed, and then a process to get appointments made. So that's the process we're going through, so we'll continue that as a board.
What is the name of that committee?
It's just a comprehensive plan committee. It's now a standing committee as opposed to an ad hoc committee. An ad hoc committee does its work and ends, and so it was turned into a standing committee so that it's staffed on a permanent basis, and then appointments need to be made, and then a charge developed, et cetera.
Anybody else want to zero in on that? That's ongoing, right? All right, we'll go to number 9. We've heard some of the agencies and staff reports, but anything else you guys want to add on? Anybody can start.
Everybody's got it. You got it in front of you. If there's a question, very happy to answer it. Like we said, most of those projects have not, there's a lot of them that just haven't started yet. Hopefully, we met with, help me out, Dale Johnston, who's doing the Toady project, and he's like Seth said, staging right now as we speak probably. And waiting on Beerwager's corn to come off, and on waiting for it to dry up probably on the wetland, Fishbach wetland, so. And then Kristovich's fence is going in as we speak as well. So pretty much that's about it. But if anybody's got any questions? Yeah, John.
What do you do in the winter time? You do the slow.
That's when we do our designs.
So they clean roadsides. In the picture.
I was just wondering, yeah, I'm sure there's always something, but yeah.
Yeah, we're always a year behind with our designs. So now we're doing designs this winter for next summer.
Oh,
The projects this year that are going now were designed last winter.
thank you.
Questions, comments for Mike? If not, Seth?
Yep, so in addition to the projects that are going in, water quality monitoring is decent sized portion of some of the reports. So I helped install a flow meter off Reamer Road with the US Geological Survey. That should also have a camera installed at that site as well. So you can check on their website once that camera's up and running, and you'll be able to look at the river whenever you want, see where the water's levels at. And if it's all full of ice in the winter, you'll be able to track that. So that's kind of neat piece of data that we're using. We also put in 2 trail cameras as of now at the Toady project, upstream and downstream of the project area, and there will be 1 installed post-project in the middle. So we'll be tracking that with pictures as well to see how the geomorphology changes with our practices that we install there. And then in the meantime, just did a lot of permitting, behind the scenes work there, individual general permits with Army Corps of Engineers and Wisconsin DNR, as well as stormwater permits if they're needed. So there's also a couple pictures there at the bottom, one at the Marengo River off Government Road. There's a USGS station there that I helped them grab water samples from. Those bubbles in the bottom part of that picture, just clearing out the water lines. There's a oxygen tank there, and it forces air out to reset the system, and then cleans out the line so it's not full of debris and sand and mucky stuff. Then there's also a picture of Mark Jomel's access road that he put in this year. Matt was along for that, operating the drone for us, and got some pretty cool different vantage points of how construction projects are installed. So any questions with any of that stuff? Yeah, George.
I just had a comment, your use of drones. When we were downstate at this county's conference, had a long conversation with one of the supervisors from Buffalo County, and his daughter operate a business of fertilizing and insecticide spraying by drone. It seemed to be becoming a big business downstate. Is this on our radar?
That would probably be a better question for Matt to answer. So since he's on more of like the nutrient management and wildlife damage. So I'll let him talk on that.
Yeah, that gets utilized. There's no businesses up here that I know that are spraying with drones. Farmers are asking about it. I don't think it's financially feasible for the farmers themselves to own the drones currently to be spraying and doing precision ag. There's a couple guys in the county that are very interested in precision agriculture. It's on everybody's radar. People are talking about it. It's just, there's nobody up here that currently does it. Those drones are huge and they're very, very, very expensive. So it's not here yet, but people are talking about it.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Go ahead, Scott.
Alrighty, so you should have my report in front of you. As always, feel free to ask questions along the way. Otherwise, just to highlight just a few select items there. So we had a really good 2023 field season. We were able to monitor more inland lakes than any year in history here. So that was always nice to do that. The really good news, we did find a lot of the kind of your common AIS like purple loosestrife and yellow iris and Chinese and banded mystery snails. We did find a fair amount of invasive species, but fortunately we didn't find any new invasive species or previously undocumented invasives there. So that was definitely good news there. Ashland County remains, as far as I know, the only county out of the 72 to not have Eurasian water milfoil, curly leaf pondweed, and zebra mussels in any of our inland waters. So we so we'll definitely try to keep that going in the future here. So definitely something to hang your hat on, and we'll keep it going.
And what does that mean for the county board? That means it saves thousands and thousands of dollars from trying to treat this stuff. Once you have it, it gets expensive and time consuming.
Yeah.
So Scott's doing an excellent job monitoring, and providing education because we have it in our marinas and we do not want it in our inland lakes.
Yep, exactly. Spot on. Yeah, so that was kind of it with our monitoring work. We did probably more control efforts, I would say, than any year in history as well. So we really ramped up our garlic mustard control all throughout Ashland County. Yellow iris as well. We're starting to see that a little bit more. So we're doing some control with yellow iris. Purple loosestrife been around for decades there. So we're doing both manual control with hand pulling as well as some biocontrol using Galaracella beetles as well. And then just wanted to touch to our conservation technicians did a real nice job for us this summer. They started up in way late May. And we had one of them on board through August the 18th, and then the other one was right around Labor Day or so. So it's nice to have those folks on board and helping out. And then one last really quick thing is I ordered all the trees and shrubs for our tree and shrub sale for 2024. So that updated list is on my report. So if you're interested in checking those out, definitely feel free to look at that, and I will be sending out the order forms this winter. So stay tuned on that. Thank you.
On the tree and shrub sale, so reading some on trees and taproots in particular and roots, you know, the bigger white cedar, you know, I put in 10 of those this year, tried that, and I don't know, maybe 8 are doing okay, although one was really a big one that got split, and it's really 9 trees, 2 are damaged. One was undersized, should have been there. But the other 7 were what I was expecting, and about 6 are doing okay. The smaller ones get the snow load, and from prior years are struggling. So on the one hand, I get that. But I've been reading more about taproots. And so one of the drawbacks, and I'm trying to understand why my red pine and white pine on my nice sandy loam that I've babied and pampered and watered and mulched and you name it, I don't know if I got 20% of it making it, and it shocks me. And so I'm thinking the trees are too big for the conditions they're in. I get those warm, hot days on that higher ground, and they're just not making it. So over the winter, and you think, and I've been ordering a lot out of Iowa State Nursery and other places, so I get it earlier. But I'm thinking the size of the trees and taproots, depending on where they're being planted, some of it might not be as working as well as I've been hoping. So those things, if you do a little more research on it, maybe over the winter when we talk, I might come back to that. But I'm thinking that some of these smaller pines, depending on where they're planted, if they can get enough light, you know, from, you know, competing, they might have a better success rate, not just getting established with climate change, because these first 2, 3, 4, 5 years can be really hard, you know, more so than in the past. But then that root structure, especially if there should be a taproot, if those aren't developing like they should be, then the long-term life of that tree isn't what it would otherwise would be. So I'm trying to understand more of that better before I put in my tree orders for next year.
Yeah, those would actually be some really good questions for a DNR forester. You know, they are specialized in forestry. Scott and I read and we learn, but we're not specialized in this area. So it's hard. And every site is a little different. So one thing that I do mention to landowners is if you have areas of your land that are lower pockets, I call them micro habitats. Those might be areas where certain species that we know are likely to be threatened in the future, those might be sites that would be more conducive to some of these threatened trees because they would have a better chance in a lower lying, a little micro habitat that hopefully won't be affected as much in the future. And, you know, we were in a severe drought this summer. Ashland was one of few counties that was actually designated as a federal disaster. So it's really hard to compete with the drought too.
I lost over 25% of the trees that had been planted 2 or more years ago this year. So my ground runs from a lower area that's a wet part of it's a wetland now up to this high sandy loam that's Lake Superior shoreline. So I get all the variety, you know, on that land, but it's really challenging. I think a workshop over the winter that would be of interest, at least I think to a lot of people, is the topic that you just talked about, because you know, as climate changes, you have to pick the places where something can transition to, or what we currently have can still survive, whereas somewhere else it didn't. On public radio a few years ago, there was a forester from Minnesota. She was at the end of her career. And one of the things she talked about is similar to what Mary Jo just mentioned. As they were planting trees with the transition with climate change, they were working themselves and informing the public to pick these places that are conducive to planting it with the transition, because one place may be okay, but a few hundred feet away, the other side of the hill may not be. And so anything we can do to get that success rate higher, as much as I read, I'm like, you know, where you guys are at, I'm trying to understand this, but I mean, red pine, I can't believe it. We planted it in 4-H and it was like, seemed like everyone lived. Now I can't get them to grow 20% maybe.
The Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science, they do workshops on this.
Yeah.
So, you know, we could talk to them about trying to schedule something.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Anything else for Scott? Any questions, comments? Or like Jerry and I would remember our old metals teacher, he'd say, any questions, any comments? Any yips, yaps, yo, jodel, squeak, squawk, 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 remember old? Go ahead, Matt.
All right, so if you got my report in front of you, you can see some of the numbers from wildlife damage and from agriculture. I'm going to try to keep it a little more concise today. The bulk what I've been working on the last several weeks has been bear and elk damage, primarily to corn, some deer damage to beans as well. In this last week and a half, I've been doing all of the appraisals on corn across Bayfield, Ashland, and Iron County, which ends up being well over 1,000 acres, which takes quite a bit of time. Seth has been able to help me, and we've seen the damage this year. Bear damage seems to be down a little bit this year. Elk damage seems to be a little bit up. Next week, there's going to be all the appraisals going to be done on soybean fields. And then from these appraisals that I'm working on, the next LCC meeting, I'll have like claims put together where we will pay out those farmers for the damage they had. So currently going through that, putting together the paperwork to get that ready for the next one. So a lot of it's just been running around, a lot of drive around the counties, looking at a lot of corn. I've shucked a lot of corn in the last week and a half. And Seth has helped me with that too. Anyone have any questions on that? There's some pictures on the back from some of the elk and bear damage that I've seen this year, which are kind of fun to look at.
Go ahead, Pat.
Are you familiar with Snapshot Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Okay, so I signed up for that a few years ago. Another county board member told me about that. So they've got blocks, I think they're like 3 miles by 3 miles or so. So last winter, they had sent out an email saying if anybody knows where bear dens are, we'd be interested in coming looking at them. And they sent it out to everybody that has a Snapshot Wisconsin camera, you know, hoping that they'd get more data on bears. So with the bear damage here, if there's, and I could look on this or you could with Snapshot Wisconsin, if there's blocks available, because they only do one, I think it's every 3 miles by 3 miles. If there's people down there where there's blocks available, Snapshot provides the camera and everything, so there's no cost. You get the equipment. It works out really slick. It might give us more information on location of bears. And if you know where you seem to have a lot of bear damage, and if Snapshot Wisconsin has a block available, maybe you could find someone that would be interested in putting up a camera, and that would give us more data and the DNR. And I think part of that is just trying to understand how many licenses to issue for bear hunting, so they have better data than they otherwise have. Because I get bear every year on the cameras, and so.
Yeah, I've definitely mentioned it, and a lot of the farmers that have the bear damage have trail cameras already. I have mentioned it to them before. A lot of them get hesitant at times of the year when they want to run them, and yeah, there is some interest. They're already running trail cameras, and I'll definitely keep pushing people. I'm in the loop from the internal loop on the DNR Snapshot stuff, so I see quite a bit of that stuff fairly regularly, and they ask us to push it to people. which we definitely do, especially on these guys that do have a lot of bear damage. Some of these guys have an awful lot of bear damage. So yeah, definitely pushing it to them, but as you know, it's up to them kind of to actually do it. And some of them are hesitant to put them up.
Well, there's two of us on the county board that I know of that have them, and it's all the equipment, so there's no cost, and it's, I find it really interesting. So there's, it's not like the government's coming on your land and they just give you the equipment and every few months you upload the pictures, and it's pretty cool to see that. So and they, if someone wants to contact me I'd be happy to talk to them, sir.
Oh, okay.
I can see on these farmers with the enrolled in the damage department here, are they the same ones like every year?
Pretty much there's people that we know year over year that are gonna be in it. If they have, for like bear especially, if they have $1,000 in damage the previous year, they're eligible immediately to enroll. And if they have a history of 3 years of having $1,000 in damage, they're eligible for like shooting permits right away. And we've definitely got people that meet that criteria every single year. So there's some that we know, and we start with paperwork with them in like July. That we just know in the next couple weeks, bear are gonna start getting there. And I'm working with APHIS. We are keeping track of all these farm fields and historic damage, which is why this drone is so handy to see where this damage is at, and we're mapping it out and keeping it year over year so that the next year, initially they can set traps in the spots where there's the most amount of damage. I've had one person this year that enrolled for elk damage. And while I've been driving around assessing their corn for elk damage, it turns out they have a ton of bear damage. And they did not get in the program. It's too late to get into the program for bear damage. And so what we've done, they've expressed interest that next year they want to enroll for bear. So maps have been built, and I've already sent them to the federal government for where next year let's plan on get these guys enrolled and get traps set. So yeah, it's most of the same people year over year. If we provide something like a fence or covers or anything like that, they sign up every single year so that they can keep that material in their possession. So yeah, it is a lot of the same people. There's definitely, like this year for elk, there's a ton of new people. A ton of new people for elk damage.
Does it look like it might be down a little bit from last year?
Bear damage?
Yeah.
Definitely down. Last year was a slower year, and this year seems to be even slower yet. APHIS, who does the bear trapping for us, they kind of can warn me how busy of a year it's going to be based on the nuisance trapping that they do throughout the course of the summer. And this year they had maybe 2 spots where they trapped all summer, so we knew it was not going to be a super busy year. And it ended up being quite a low year for bear damage. There's still definitely plenty, as you can see in some of those pictures, but definitely a lower year.
You don't get involved with the wolf?
Nope.
How come?
So the program, how I'm paid for is from a $2 surcharge on all hunting licenses. And so part of the stipulation for the program is that when they enroll, they have to allow
Yeah,
hunting of the
USDA
species.
takes care of the problem DNR.
Yep.
But I would still think that maybe we would get involved. I mean, it's a bigger thing coming now. Tim lost 3 calves early in the year, and he had a couple of them hurt, and of course me, I've been around too long already, and so these guys, these 2 young fellows, one come from Mellon and the other one from Hayward, and they're with USDA.
Yep.
And they're putting a solar panel radio out in the middle of the field. They put it on a wagon or a wheelbarrow, whatever. And when it gets to a certain temperature or light, that radio comes on and plays for the night, and I says to the guy, he says, "Oh, does that work pretty good?" He says, "Yeah, sometimes a couple, 3 weeks." And then he said, they kind of get used to it. I said, "Yeah, I think the other morning I seen 2 wolves dancing while they were eating their steak." He didn't even look at me. He
Yeah.
walked away.
Yeah, the federal government works with wolves because they're so subject to federal law right now, back and forth. The wildlife damage program that we cover only is huntable species on crops, nothing to do with actual livestock.
My thought on that is, and I don't know how you would control that or how you would approach that, but if he can't find a carcass, they won't pay. And that's bull. I mean, when he counts his animals, and when there's a couple gone, and he says, hey, there's a couple gone, and we gotta look for the vultures to see. But that wolf, about 6-7 years ago, he lost some. And biologist came in there, and there was 13 wolves that were eating on that calf. And he could tell you how old they were by their paw print. He could tell you how heavy the male was that killed it, and how big the jaw was because the calf was there and the front was still left, It was amazing what he could do by just, while he got experience. The problem is this isn't gonna go away. And I would hope that we as a county would kind of support our young farmers with, knowing that they're there, and, just the person being there, I would like to have seen you there to see and listen to these guys, because I'm not the right guy to be talking to them.
The challenge with this, George, is that is a federally regulated animal.
I understand that.
So counties and states do not have the authority to supersede federal
I understand that.
decision-making.
The point.
And like Matt's program, he deals with crops, not the actual animal damage.
Yeah.
So it's crop
I
damage.
understand that, Mary Jo. It's just when there are people and they're being hit on from a federal creature, that I think that, it would have been nice. All I'm saying is it would have been great to see Matt there. Because I'll tell you what, here 5, 6, 7 years ago when they were there, the tribe had all their biologists there. They were there checking them too to make sure they weren't a coyote or dogs, and right away it was dogs. And the DNR biologist says, no, it wasn't dogs, So the point being is the backing. Well, no, I was there. I seen it, the documentation is what I'm talking about, and you still don't have elk kill permits? No elk. Well, you drive around a little bit and you've seen it, here last March or so with the heavy snows, and I went past Adam Lindquist's place, and he's got about easily 100 yards of round bales, and they're double packed. He's got them in a wrap, and then he's got them in a sausage where they put them in there. And I counted 17 deer, no heads, just the rear ends. All the heads were in them bales eating, And I'm sure there's not a lot of damage there, but because there's the other thing. We get here years ago, it was a $500 deductible. Well, it takes a lot to get, if you look at these pictures, you got just spots. Boy, I tell you what, there ain't hardly $500 damage in that picture. Then we got it to $250. Then they moved it back to $500. The problem we have in our state, and this is what Mary Jo, when we were talking about these resolutions, and I don't know if the WLWA is doing that, but there is a allotment of money. So let's just use zeros, like $10,000 put in there. And if they got 31,000, you get a percentage of the 10,000. You don't get the full amount. I don't know if they have a lot of problems with that, or do we have just mostly, I'm sure we have mostly bear damage up in the north.
Yeah, I mean, the elk damage is typically where you're gonna see that happen, where after $5,000, I wanna say you get only 80% or 75% of the claim payout and a maximum of $10,000. And that's been talked about at the state level to try to change those numbers because of the elk damage. There's one farmer I know in Russ County that loses roughly $25,000 worth of corn a year. And that's the elk are changing what those numbers look like. For bear, like you're saying, I mean, in those pictures right there, that guy ended up having like over 1,000 acres of corn, and he's got, I don't have the final numbers, but he's probably got a couple $1,000s worth of damage.
one
But
down
the
on
elk
the
are a different story.
Left, the bottom left there, whose is that?
That's Bayfield County. That's actually somebody that did not enroll in the program. That is Bruce Anderson. is
That's
the guy's name.
that's all bear damage?
That's bear, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of bear around there. to make
Yeah,
that
there's a
kind
lot of
damage.
bear. That was with that one. We were flying looking at a field on the other side of the road, and there was like one little
How
tiny
about the
pocket.
top one then, the top picture on that left?
The very, very top left.
Yeah,
That's elk damage down in Butternut.
wow.
Yeah, that
Oh.
field was level. 80% of
Did you
that
see
field. was
that
gone.
field before? It was a pretty good field?
Yeah, it started out pretty good in that area. That farmer has elk damage year over year. And that one was pretty good. And he gave me a call this year and he lost an entire field right away. And so I called and we got this new repellent. We're the first people to use it. As far as I'm aware in the state of Wisconsin, called Trico. And we sprayed it, but by the time we asked the agronomist to get it and apply it to this guy's field, 80% of it had been eaten by elk. So there's a sprayer, the picture to the right, that's them spraying a cornfield that's got a little bit of elk damage, but we use that and it's hard to say how well it worked. There's elk in there and we don't think they're eating on the corn anymore. We think they're probably just bedding down in there. I had the farmer text me 2 days ago with a picture of elk in a field that was applied, but when Seth and I walked around, it didn't seem that there was fresh damage from it. But I mean, they ate an entire one of his cornfields, 80% of the cornfield in that picture, 40% of a different cornfield. We're talking huge numbers, and very, very fast. So we're hoping next year that guy's gonna get sprayed quite early. And we're gonna see how that works. Kind of hard this year, like I said, to determine how well it actually worked. We got to it just a touch late. And it's a brand new product that the state is very interested in having used, and they're very happy that we used it. But next year we'll learn a little more about it.
Well, that would bring up a question to Matt and Mary Jo probably. About 4, 5, 6 years ago, when Dave Schultz was our animal project coordinator, Bayfield County was gonna go out on their own. How come they didn't?
Well, I was lobbying for the counties to stick together. So Iron, Bayfield, and Ashland agreed to stick together so that we could continue supporting a position. And then Douglas County broke off. Now, we've gotten to the point where with the elk damage, we've talked about this at previous meetings. This split position for Matt to run ag technician in the 4 counties and wildlife damage in 3 counties has become more work than a one person job. So at the end of this year, we have to make a decision. We've applied for our National Association of Conservation Districts grant for the ag technician position. And I applied for next year to receive full funding to get 100% funded position. The last couple of years, I've only been requesting partial funding to pay for 50% of his job. And then we get 50% paid for from wildlife damage, the DNR. But it's not sustainable. Last year, he had over 140 hours of overtime, which just, it's not sustainable and it's not healthy for a person to have that much demand. So I've applied for the NACD grant, National Association of Conservation Districts, to fund a full-time position. We applied for that back in July. We still have not heard. We were supposed to know in September if we got the grant. And I was notified yesterday that they've been oversubscribed, which means that they've received more requests than what they have funding.
Imagine that.
The National Association hasn't decided what they're gonna do yet. Does that mean everyone's gonna get a little bit? Does that mean some people are gonna get cut? I don't even know yet. Once we find out what we're being offered, we're gonna have to decide, is that enough for us to fund a position, and are we gonna let go of wildlife damage? Or if we are told that we're only gonna get a minimal amount of funding and it's not enough for us to fund a position, then do we let go of the ag technician work that we're providing the 4 counties and we just stick with wildlife damage? And in that scenario, I've talked to Matt, we still have deliverables to the state that we have to provide on ag lands. We have to write nutrient management plans. We need to work with our farmers on conservation practices on ag lands. So we've talked about the fact that if we cannot get enough funding for the ag technician position, what I'm recommending is that we continue doing wildlife damage in the 3 counties, and then we only do ag technician work in Ashland. But then we're going to be telling Iron County, Bayfield County, and Douglas County, we can no longer provide this ag support to you, which means the no-till demonstration work, using the no-till drill in those counties. Matt's been writing nutrient management plans in all those counties. But at this point, we know this is no longer sustainable. The ag tech program has grown. The wildlife damage with all the elk damage has grown. Both of them have grown excessively.
Now, are you, do you have a resolution at the state, land and water, conference, asking for this? Because, I mean, Ashland County was pulled out of the hat. Now they got Jackson County, but I mean, we got 200 elk. We got a lot of elk up here already. And when you look at a picture like that, that picture should be on every page, you know, and when you're talking, you know, Cole, you know, you got a Kentucky with 15,000 elk, you know, and there states around them with 500-600, but you know, you can imagine what they're asking for. They're asking for more than one technician, you know.
One other thing to consider is that in 2019, the legislature proposed a bill that wildlife damage would be turned back to the DNR. There's about 17 counties in the state that administer wildlife damage locally. I think 17 counties. There's 53 counties that it is administered by the DNR through Wildlife Services. The other counties don't participate in any sort of wildlife damage. So in 2019, there was a bill proposed that all the counties that have wildlife damage would be administered by the state. Then COVID hit. So that bill was never voted on in 2020 and it died. If the bill is not voted on in that year, it doesn't stand. This bill has not been reintroduced yet, but there is talk that eventually this program will no longer be administered at the county level. So that's why we've been working on the ag technician side too and seeking other funding so that we can support a position. But it is possible that at some time in the future, we will not have the choice to administer wildlife damage locally. The state may make that decision for us. So if we get rid of our ag technician grant and we're only seeking funding from wildlife damage, and then eventually if that program goes back to the state, we lose a position. So there's unknowns right now that we can't answer today or tomorrow or probably next week. But we've been working to try and address the challenges that we have both on the ag side and wildlife damage, and to try and make strategic decisions with the funding sources that are available to us.
Well, my challenge to you on your coffee breaks was that this picture be sent to all of our legislators. This elk picture, that needs that. I'm sure they don't see it and they don't care. But that needs to be shown, this is Ashland County and this is what because the state initiated that when Governor Thompson initiated that in 95. I mean, it was put up here, not hoping it would expand, but probably not to that tune. If you see these animals, they're 800-900 pounds. They just go through anything and destroy anything. So I'm hoping that we would get that picture out to our state WLWCA, our state land and water board, and a picture of that would should go. And the other thing is we got state senate or national senators, Congress people. Those people should really see this project and tell them, 20 years ago, then Senator Cole sent $500,000 up to this area for grazing specialists. Of course, he's gone, but that should still be, we should be sending those little ticks to those people. I mean, he just flat out, a bunch of people from the central part, Taylor County and St. Croix and Marathon says, hey, we need grazing specialists up here. Cole, because he was on appropriations, he put $500,000. Well, about the first 4 or 5 years, that money went into the state fund. Then all of a sudden we had our bunch of people got together and we got our, so that's where we need that. And we need our federal, it's their program. Doggone it, they need, we need to, let them know where we stand on it.
I will say too, I keep up pretty regularly sending these things to the head of the program for the state who oversees it for the whole state. And with this like repellent that we used, it was from them that they said, try this out. It's extremely expensive and not within the realm that we would typically do. It's $132 an acre to get it applied. And elk is a big issue. I've been in their ear quite a lot. And so they are quite willing to work. There's just so much it's so different. They are willing to work. They're willing to put money that way. And I will pass that on to them, but they are very willing to figure out what it is. We're just trying to figure out what the best approach is for the state of Wisconsin. There's discussion of ways we're going to protect hay bales. We're going to do like an open bidding thing to put in these huge enclosed structures for people to store hay bales at super reduced cost or nothing to the farmer. And then these repellents, hopefully we can get the prices down. So there are things on the horizon that I think look very good, but it is good to keep on them because our farmers in the meantime are the ones that are getting hit by these elk.
Question, the lower right-hand picture, where was that taken? And when?
That was Highbridge yesterday.
Yesterday?
Yeah.
They got that much color?
Oh yeah.
They must have froze.
I don't know if you'd think with that color that they have, that was taken yesterday in Highbridge.
I was in Ladysmith on Monday and they froze down there. They got just gorgeous colors, but that surprises me because we don't have any of that up here yet.
That whole Highbridge area is all turned.
Questions for any of our technicians? Go ahead, Pat.
I do think we have to look at keeping the ag technician part here, and I don't know what the answer is to the elk and the deer damage and bear damage. On the one hand, the farmers have a legal right to compensation, and the state, is obligated to make sure that there's a way of getting that compensation to them. But, we focus on elk, at least for the moment here, and yeah, these are pretty dramatic pictures, but every deer, every elk, every bear, they're all going to eat something. So even if you keep them out of the hay bales and corn, they're eating something else. And, back to trees, they're going to eat, and they do eat a lot of trees and damage there. It adversely affects our biodiversity. And so, the real problem is we just have too much of some of this and we don't have the balance of nature we should. And why do we have so much? Well, because so many people like to hunt and the state thinks that's economic development. But there's a cost to it, and the state needs to make sure that they reimburse people who incur these costs to get compensated. And I think it's really unfortunate that your office has to figure out how to juggle things. To, on the one hand, an ag technician to help people grow crops, and on the back end, well, let's get people reimbursed for the damage. Because where I'm at, out by Mason, just so many deer, and even though it's not dramatic, they're in the fields eating too, and it adds up. It's just not as dramatic, and that all costs the farmers too.
The wildlife damage program is quite unique to the state of Wisconsin. I don't know of another state that does it even remotely close to how we do it. Most other states don't have a solution for their farmers. And it is nice to see that we're proactive in that, and that farmers do get some kickback from it. Not much in it, like you mentioned, the deductibles are difficult and the program's not perfect by any means, but at least there's something for some people. And it is nice too that with that surcharge on hunting licenses, the hunters that want these species here are the ones that are contributing that money to pay them back. It's not a perfect program, but it is nice that there is something out there.
Go ahead.
It's a quick question. Is there an increase in the turkey population, and does that have any ramifications?
Yeah, I would say just from what I've seen, there seems to be an awful lot of turkeys around. I don't know if I've ever seen as many as I've seen this year. Exact numbers, I'd point you to a wildlife biologist, but I'm seeing an awful lot. And the turkey damage that we see is a lot of late fall, early winter. That is a lot of what I do in the winter is turkey damage, primarily to silage bags. Is a ton of damage from turkeys. A ton of damage from turkeys. Yeah. Large amounts of silage. It's unbelievable. I've pulled into one farmer's driveway who had silage in Iron County, and he told me he had probably 200 turkeys in his driveway. I was skeptical. I pulled in, he had all of that, if not more.
So is there compensation for that damage or not?
Yep. Turkeys are in the program. The program covers deer, elk, bear, turkeys, and geese, the hunting species that do damage to crops. There's no shortage of turkey. Like I said, that's all in the winter though. Not all of it, but the most of that happens in the winter. And deer and elk last winter were a huge part of that. Yeah, turkeys are in the winter though. Typically that's when we see it.
Any other questions, comments for any of our technicians? If not, well, go ahead.
One thing, 4 years ago, I had my two grandkids visit with me. They were there for 2 weeks. 30 feet away at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, a wolf comes in front of us and kills my dog 30 feet in front of me, along with my grandkids there. So I ran my dog to cable, and then we called Adrian Pearson, the head of the wolf biologist. And he came in and he looked at my dog, and he came back to my property, and you could see where it happened. But to make a short story is that I put an article, Outdoor Life, Wisconsin magazines, every local paper there was, and never got a response from the DNR. The only response I got was Adrian says that there is a new pack that's being East Torch pack. Well, I don't care. They're not managed right. When they can come in my front yard and kill my dog and sterilize my kids, they never came outside for 2 weeks after. That was just an incident that happened but that's all. It was not a good deal.
I will add I don't think there is an exception. I think every single farmer that has contacted me about any of the species I cover, they have all brought up the wolf population and the issues they're having with wolves. Every single one of them, pretty much every time, every field I'm driving in, there's wolf tracks absolutely everywhere. There's no shortage of them. And like I said, that's not what I cover, but I definitely lay it on to the guys that do cover that. And it is becoming quite the issue.
Well, you gotta look at a little bit of our history. In the early 2000s, the DNR came to us and asked us if we would support 500 wolves. And we did. Well, they're up around 800 now, and our biologist here a few years ago told us in the spring, there's as many as 2,500 with all the pups and everything. But anything will kill a wolf. I mean, they're a deadly enemy to everything. So if a dog or a coyote or anything gets a chance, so by the time winter rolls around, they're back down to 700-800. And they only ask for 500, so like you said, they don't want farmers up here, they never did want farmers up here. Madison, Milwaukee, when we had our research station up here, we couldn't keep the research station going because they had to have a professor from Madison come up and do a project. Well, how many of them are gonna come up here and do a project? None of them. So it is just, you know, and that's kind of the history of where we've been. I mean, back in the 80s and early 90s, they wanted to shut off St. Peter's Dome, and they have shut that off to all motorized vehicles. Well, they wanted to make that a boundary control, like Minnesota, the boundary control. You don't go up there, but none of them ever come up here. They couldn't care less. They just don't want us to do it. Just like they made the Apostle Islands, the National Lake Shore. Other than Madeline, you can go and camp there, but nobody can own land on the islands no more. So that's part of life. Not that it's good, because it is not good. Any others? How about you, you already had enough.
I have three things. On my report, I mostly highlighted the reimbursements that we've been working on. So in the last couple weeks, we've closed out a couple of grants. Some of these are annual grants. The program that Scott works in, we receive a Lake Monitoring and Protection Network grant and a Clean Boats, Clean Waters grant annually from the state. So we've closed out a few grants recently and requested reimbursement for just over $78,000. That's what's highlighted below. And then as these Act 157 projects are implemented, hopefully in October, that will close out 3 additional grants totaling just over $238,000. So there'll be quite a bit of money coming back into the county between this month and next month. The second thing is, as soon as we hear about our grant on the ag technician, probably at our meeting in December, we'll have an agenda item on that so we can make a formal decision how we want to handle that position. And then finally, I would like to recognize Mike. So we're having lunch at noon today for him. 22 years. I counted over 246 engineering designs that he's worked on for the last 22 years and thousands and thousands of hours. So anyways, I would like to recognize him. And then also Seth will be filling that position, the civil engineering technician position, and he will formally be starting that position on October 9th. So I know a couple of you mentioned you can't make it for lunch today, but I would like to recognize Mike, and we'll celebrate this afternoon at noon at Prentice Park. So thank you, Mike. His official next day is next Friday. I assume next week will be a pretty busy week with projects, but I don't know if you want to say anything, but it's been a long, successful career.
I want to say, yes, Mike's been here 22 years, is it? 23, and it's always hard to get along with the landowners, especially the farmers. They are stewards of the land and they do care about conservation, but they're sometimes hard to deal with. But Mike has a canny way of conversing with them and communicating with them. And I talked to a lot of farmers and I haven't heard any too many bad things ever said about him. That he's all kinds of cooperation and because of his unique way of communicating with them. And that being said, I want to also give a compliment to our leader and our whole entire staff and what they're doing, how they implemented these programs and gotten through, and it's a lot easier to make our next plan because of what has been done and how they've handled it. And thanks, Mike.
Yeah, well, Yeah, thank you. It's been great. It's hard to believe 23 years, but it's gone by fast. Kind of a funny story. I was number 3 on the list. First guy turned it down. Second guy never showed up for whatever reason, so they got me a 3rd place ribbon and I still got it hanging on my desk up there. But I want to thank George especially for taking a chance on me. You believed in me and it meant a lot to me, George, so thank you.
You betcha. You're most welcome. I think you've done a real nice job. You know, and the position is where we give you enough time to catch on. You did get certified in some of the things, which I was pretty proud of, that you go out on your own, like the access roads and all that. You could sign off on it. That meant a lot to the guys, that we had local people that didn't have to go to Madison or something right away. So, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Been great. Appreciate it.
One thing is, I've been on, land and conservation, and I'm on, Ashland County Forestries. And this committee here is my most favorite one of all. It's so interesting. And I want to say that this is the most professionalized committee I've been to of all the committees I've been on. And I want to thank everybody here for all the hard work they're doing. Amen.
I hope you're not leaving. You're not allowed off.
I'm saying this is a great committee and I love it.
Any other reports, any other questions, comments, from anybody on staff or agencies? If not, we go into other business. We got any other business? Lunch? Yeah, that's the only other business. That's real business, yeah. All right, that's it. Thank you. Meeting adjourned. We'll see how that